I remember loving him, lost, ever feeling sick, lonely. Finally, I got a ring. I'm not enough. Find my inner power and peace. Moving abroad alone at 20 with very limited resources forced me to think carefully who to leave behind and who to let in my new life. I had to rebuild every single relationship in my life with my family, with my friends, my romantic relationships, and most importantly, myself. 5 years later, I am comfortable living my dream life. So, here are 5 hard truths about relationships I wish I knew earlier. It's the new year, so it might seem strange to talk about the past, but one thing I've learned is that the perfect timing for a difficult conversation is the moment it happens. This is a very raw video, but it's my real process. I was rather lost and lonely going through this, so I'm sharing it now in case someone else needs a hand to hold, especially after the holiday season. Feel free to stop at any point if it feels like too much, but if you stay until the end, there is a happy ending waiting for you. I have a mother and a father, but I don't have a mom and a dad. Growing up, my father would never say hello first. He never showed any excitement when I came home. He was just there, usually at his computer. I would say hello out of procedure just to stay out of trouble, and he would barely acknowledge me. I remember the physical weight lifting from my stomach whenever I came home and realized he wasn't there so I could breathe. I was beaten and frightened in the name of discipline. I believe this came from his own upbringing as well. Allegedly, his own mother used to beat him while he was hanging by his ankles. His philosophy wasn't love and respect, it was fear and horror. Once I grew up and stopped being scared of him, our only emotional connection is also gone. Now he feels like a stranger to me. Our relationship hit rock bottom when I left for Germany in 2020. I refused to speak to him or sit at the same table. Because of the pandemic, I didn't see him again for 2.5 years. When I finally looked him in the eye again in 2023, he looked old and washed out. It didn't feel like seeing my own father, but some acquaintance I used to know. Between us, there wasn't only emotional distance, but also a huge gap of time that no one wanted to talk about. Now that he's a grandfather, 8,000 kilometers and a continent between us, he would text me happy birthday and says he loves me. He also seems excited and happy every time I call. It's unfortunate because I would cringe every time and I don't think I could ever say it back. Every time he texted me like that, I would just say thank you. It's even more unfortunate because things weren't always like that. I used to love him. When I was 4, I loved him. I would get so excited whenever I see him again. I would be very happy seeing him home from work. He wasn't home too often, but he wouldn't get changed until he had to pick me up. It was a good time. But when I started school and I just saw him more, I somehow hated it more. He was physically there, but emotionally absent. The only emotion presented was horror and scare. I don't remember ever feeling safe being around him, that I could just relax and do whatever I like. Something I only realized recently, that my disgustful smell of cigarettes comes from him. When I was little, he would walk away from me to smoke, so cigarettes meant distance. Later, when I wanted him to leave me alone, I would still smell his cigarette around as the evidence of his presence, haunting me. Things are easier with my mother because she provided the care, but I've never felt I could open up to her. I couldn't share my worries or heartbreaks without feeling judged, or she was absently waiting for her turn to talk. She was both the breadwinner and the caretaker, working 2 jobs and doing all the chores. She was traumatized too. separated from her parents, young and forced to care for mean, entitled half-siblings while living with a stepmother when the father was absent. My mother became a hyper-independent and people pleaser. She never cries or speaks of feelings or emotions, or that I know of, but she shouts when she overwhelmed. She took my hardships personally. When I had my first heartbreak, she called me stupid for crying. She couldn't handle my pain because she never got to process her own. She chose to be a bystander when my father terrorized me because she didn't want to break the perfect family image, which was her childhood dream. Now that I do my own chores and live my own life, I realize I don't really miss her because she was never truly present in my emotional life. If you asked me to say all of this in my mother tongue, I couldn't. I don't have the words. I never talked about feelings in my first language. It feels awkward and misunderstood. I can write poetry about my past in English, but I can't say it to my parents. The barrier isn't the language, it's the connection. This relationship still haunts me. Sometimes I break contact to protect myself, but then I would spend all day defending myself against them in my head. I write everything in my journal and talk to my boyfriend, who helps me stay calm and be there with me through all the steps. More about relationship with him later. I accidentally learned what parental love looks like from my host family in Germany. One afternoon around end of business day, I came home with the kids, where my host father sat at his laptop. It's a movie I've seen before, but he stood up. The pattern breaks. He was excited to see it because he would help them with their jackets and listen intently to their stories about insects, about games and food and grandma. I stood there, too stunned to speak. I was speechless. For the first time it hit me. Oh, it's how it's supposed to be. My host mother taught me that a woman doesn't have to be chronically stressed to be a good mother. She listened without judgment and wasn't afraid to say no to things that didn't fit. She let people share her emotional burden and mental load, and I remember writing in my journal, I want to be like her, and I want my children to have a father like him. As I explored and began to know myself, my friendships shifted too. Every person I brought into my life and every person I eventually let go taught me as much about myself as I taught them. I'm not talking about people I exchange Instagrams or meet once in a while for coffee. I'm talking about all day, everyday friendships. People who knew my every thought. My first friend in Germany was also a Vietnamese au pair at the same host family. She was the one before me. Later, we became roommates when I started my bachelor's and she was leaving a dysfunctional relationship. She was a kind, sweet person, but she reflected parts of me that I wasn't ready to accept yet. My own background. At that time, I wanted to leave everything from home behind. Even though she was wonderful and helpful, I couldn't get close to her because I couldn't accept the version of myself that she reminded me of. Then there was Lisa, a girl from uni. She was brilliant, very smart, very talented, and I really liked her. I even met her family, but we moved too fast, or at least I thought. When you get too deep into someone's personal life without knowing their character, you only see the snapshots of decisions. The friendship ended abruptly after she used me as an alibi to date someone else while she was still in a relationship. When she finally ended things with her ex, she projected her guilt onto me. I remember I felt judged by my own relationship problems, whatever it is, small or big. We never addressed it. We just let the connection die. Brittany and I were close, traveling together, sleepovers, endless coffee dates. But eventually, our backgrounds collided. She came from an upper-class family in a first-world country. I came from a middle-class metropolis in the global south. Our mindsets and behaviors weren't compatible. I started to resent her for being naive about the world, for never have the real problems that I have my whole life, and resented her about it. But I didn't know how to talk to her. I didn't know how to address it without making it feel political. We broke up eventually in a messy way over a trivial argument that was really just the surface of a much bigger, unaddressed problem. The lesson I learned from Lisa and Brittany was that every relationship requires honest confrontation to survive from both sides. I tried to apply that to Kira. We met in a language course and clicked instantly. We spoke on the phone for hours. We were so synced that we would often say exact same thought at the same time. She was my support system when I moved across Germany for my master's. About 3 months in, something happened that didn't sit well with me. I texted her, explaining my thoughts with full trust that she would listen. It wasn't a fight. It was just a tough conversation. She said she understood, but then the energy changed. She stopped texting first. She became a slow texter. When I finally asked what was wrong 2 months later because I missed us, she admitted she hadn't taken my text well at all. 2 months later, I apologized because at that point, I really missed us and I wasn't mature enough to know there is no right or wrong in feelings. Both our perspectives were true to us. And as friends, we should be able to accept and make room for the other's feelings. We resumed contact, but she kept canceling our plans last minute. Eventually, she sent me a backhanded breakup text. I wanted to say something mean back because I have had enough around this time, but I chose peace. I thanked her for the time we had and hoped we could still say hi on campus. The only person I could truly have those tough conversations with was my neighbor, Sama. We were both foreigners, sharing a kitchen in a dorm. We became like family. We fought, sure, like who doesn't? But we always talked through the anger. We never made the other person feel worse for making a mistake. We only said, "I told you so," after the problem was fixed, turning it into a joke we could laugh about together. Even though we live in different cities now, that bond hasn't changed. He taught me that real friendship feels like a heart expanding, not shrinking. The most important friendship I ever built was the one with myself. But that relationship only improved when I started being the kind adult for myself that I needed as a child. To me, that healing journey came down to 3 specific pillars. Letting the anger out at a distance. I used to feel so much rage. I felt it was unfair that my parents had broken me and that they should have known better. In my culture, ranking and hierarchy were everything, and many twisted or toxic things can be hidden under the name of tradition. But I eventually realized it was mostly a mix of financial burden and a lack of emotional knowledge. To process this, I started writing everything down. I remember the first time I was so angry about a matter back home that didn't even involve me. I spent an hour shouting at my mother on the phone. Afterward, I felt so confused. I just wanted to understand why I was reacting that way. I started writing in English. I chose English for 2 reasons. Most of the hearing resources I found were in English, and the language itself gave me the space to look at my life objectively. In my mother tongue, my father's threats felt like laws. In English, they sounded absurd. For example, his go-to threat, "I haven't asked you for anything back yet." In my language, that implies I am in a deep, lifelong debt to him for being born, having him as my own father. In English, that deep meaning can't be translated without context. Or when he asked, "How many times beaten you think you deserve?" As if my only value was punishment. Writing this down felt dark, and it cost me so much tear. Sometimes I couldn't even believe it was actually something real that happened to me. But using a second language was like using a magnifying glass. It allowed me to separate my true self from my conditioning. I had a space to feel free and to breathe. Second, giving myself the protection I never had. Once I saw the patterns, I had to change the narrative. I started reparenting my past self using the knowledge I have now in my 20s. For every time I felt helpless as a child, I stepped up as my own protector. For instance, when I was 4, I was labeled as a mean girl because I supposedly couldn't share happiness or toys. Nobody taught me that. I was disciplined for having a bad attitude. I carried that mean girl label until much later in life. Recently, I sat down and wrote a new instruction for that 4 years old. I understand it's hard to see others have things you would love to have. Being jealous isn't bad. Everyone feels it. But you can be jealous and still be happy for others. Because your jealousy just shows you what you want to achieve for yourself. Just because someone else has it doesn't mean there is nothing left for you. You have a big heart that feels everything to the fullest. And that heart will grow even bigger if you just go play with your friends. Ask them to share the toy. Bring yours too. It will be lovely. I felt a sense of empowerment after writing that passage. Sense of new power filled my heart in that moment. I did this for every mistake, every ugly thought, and every wrong person I dated. The more I defended my past self and forgive her, the gentler my inner voice became. Eventually, the world started seeing me the way I saw myself. We teach people how to teach us. While it felt weird at first, it was incredibly liberating to finally find my inner power and peace, becoming the version of me I promised to be. If I only worked on the past, I would be stuck there for forever. To build a future, I had to prove to myself that I could be reliable. I started weight training, actually just as a joke, just in case I wouldn't commit, because I've never done it before. I wanted it to become something I do out of self-love instead of self-hatred or trying to fix the belly fat. When I was a teenager, from a 9 square meter bedroom where I did my home workouts in secret, hoping no one would see me, to a chic gym with a dedicated plan and a community. Showing up for myself in that space changed my brain chemistry for the better. It wasn't just about doing sport or getting hot. It was the proof to my brain that I deserve spending time on my own, doing something for myself. Weight training was like the anchor for my self-worth. Even when I take breaks for holidays or university, I always go back because I've learned that I deserve that space. By building this version of myself, the one who could love herself on her own, I also finished the bachelor degree. I got into master program and moved to a big city to start over once again. At this time, I know deeply in my heart that I could count on myself. 2025 was the year I finally moved into my big girl apartment and found the courage to start this YouTube channel. I had to become the person who was ready for a healthy relationship before I could ever find one. And if you are also on the journey of rebuilding yourself or navigating life, if you ever feel lonely navigating through relationships, I'd love to have you join this community by clicking that subscribe button so we can grow through this process together. Now let's talk about the part I used to struggle with the most, romantic love. It's a reflection of self-love. For a long time, romantic love was a source of deep pain for me, mostly because I wasn't aware of what I was actually looking for or which version of me was looking for love. Coming from a family with such conflicting values, struggling with my self-worth and unknowingly attracting people who mirrored my own chaos, my history with romance was a mess. At first, it was a cycle of filling the void. I used to jump into immature relationships without knowing the person or myself. I was vainly looking for the recognition I never got from my parents. If someone liked me and chose me, I felt validated. On my good days, I was a people pleaser just like my mother, shrinking myself to be convenient. And on my bad days, I was exactly like my father, exploding when things got out of hand. I stumbled through a cycle of online dating, boomerangs, and situationships where I acted like my feelings didn't matter. I would shrink and shrink until I finally exploded into singleness, only to repeat the cycle again and again. My wake-up alarm was a ring. I got a ring from a very dysfunctional relationship after I ended it. I didn't know what right looked like or felt like, but I knew deep down that what I was doing was definitely wrong. This was the trigger I needed to do the shadow work I mentioned earlier. I spent 2 years dating intentionally, learned about myself, learned to say no even when I was lonely. It was definitely not a straight line. I fell back into old habits more than once, but instead of hating myself, I just watched the feelings and reminded myself gently of the direction I wanted to go. Meeting him was the standard I built. A year ago, after I moved to Düsseldorf, that I felt truly ready for something permanent. I met my now boyfriend. This relationship isn't like anything I had seen growing up. I had only seen things like this in movies. I felt things like this with the characters play in that movie. I didn't know or hope that it was ever real. But with him, I know it is, because it is the direct result of the tears and time I spent working on myself. We knew within one date. We said, "I love you," within 3 weeks. When I told him I loved him, I also said it meant I would choose him, I would choose us. And I was saying that word from the power of trusting myself to stand on my feet again, should things go south. And that love we felt grew into a deep, grounded love we share now for the last year. We were both single for a very long time before meeting, and we both held incredibly high standards. When we finally met, we saw those standards reflected in each other. There is a saying that you have to heal yourself, but a good partner helps. The way he treats me when I make a mistake, fixing things he didn't even break. This video of me went viral for exact same reason. I have his full attention and his full intention. On our first date, I was very honest with him. I looked him in the eyes and asked, "I'm here alone, so if we are doing this, you have to be my family. I am already good on my own. I don't need you to survive. So if we are doing this, you have to make my life even better, and I would do the same for you." That is exactly what we have done for the last 365 days. It might have only taken one date to know he was the one, but that date wouldn't have been possible. And the journey and the growth journey we've been going together wouldn't have been the same if I hadn't gone through my self-acceptance journey first. I am no longer living in a lack mindset, constantly thinking I am not enough. I live in abundance. I have proven to myself that I can count on me in the darkest days, and because of that, I can finally let someone else in, accept their love and hold them close. That one date only happened because I did the work to reflect on all the wrong dates before it. I'm very proud of my journey, and I have proven that I can count on myself in the darkest days. If you want to hear more about any of these topics, please let me know in the comments, or leave a heart emoji if you made it this far. Happy New Year. May this year bring you healthy, loving relationship. I wish you find the courage and trust in your heart and say yes to yourself. I love you, and I see you next Friday. Bye.